structure. So
Paul, are you taking notes?
I was just going to go ahead and take notes. Yeah. Alan had, oh, sorry. Did Paul or someone else raise their hand? I didn't know.
I was wondering if Paul was taking notes.
I certainly can.
That would be helpful. Paul,
Yeah.
I've already got a document up with the sections of the agenda. So why don't I go ahead and share that over to you?
Awesome.
Just a second here. All right, yeah, if you follow that Google Docs link, it should have what you need. All right. So to kick off here, kicking off the September edition of the DOTI Advisory Board meeting with roll call. I'll start at the top here, going by last name order. Do we have Joni Allen today? Don't hear her. All right. Lucia Brown?
Here.
Alicia Brown?
Here.
Brian Carroll?
Hello all, I'm here.
Ian Chaudhry?
I'm here.
Jake Cohen?
Here.
As mentioned, Alan Cogill is out. Paul Gonzer?
Here.
I know you're here. Yeah, hello. Christopher Johnson is excused as well. Gary Johnson?
I am here.
Joe, and actually you just realized it's been like a year and I don't know, is this Levi or Levy?
Levy. It's close.
Levy. Oh, neither.
Yeah.
All right, Levy.
But I'm not here.
You're not here. All right.
Yeah.
Joe Levy. Jamie Lewis. Not quite yet. All right. Aileen. Kurt Morrison. Didn't hear Kurt, or oh, I see Aileen is getting connected.
I see Kurt too. I don't know if he's. I see.
Oh yeah, actually I see his name here.
Yeah.
Kurt, can you hear us okay? Maybe having some issue with unmuting. Oh, audio down. All right, yep, he's here. Chris Pacheco.
Here.
Hey, Julie Raskin.
I'm here.
Hello, and Tangier Wright. I don't think Tangier is in today.
Tangier.
Oh, yeah, Tangier. All right.
No. I meant that's how she says her name, Tangier.
Oh, right. We do have quorum with this count, so we're good to go with the meeting minutes. With that, I'll put forward a motion to approve the August 8th minutes that Michelle shared out earlier today. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second by Julie Riskin.
All right, thank you. With that, could I get ayes for approving those minutes?
Aye.
Nice.
Aye.
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 Any nays? Sounds like no. Okay. So typically from here, we would move right into public comment, but I do want to take a moment for those on the line, but sort of the members of the public who may not have known this happened in the last month. Between the August meeting and now, there were 2 board votes conducted electronically and ultimately both approved for business that had to be handled between meetings due to some level of time sensitivity. One of those was actually discussed in our last meeting. We did review, vote, and approve the policy recommendations related to micromobility put together by the policy subcommittee. Those have been delivered to the department after we reached a quorum of assenting votes. An item that others would not know of, so from our last meeting, is that there was also there's an outstanding request for funding to the federal government under their Safe Streets for All program. The department has been putting together a number of grant applications for a variety of projects that qualify for enhanced multimodal funding in one capacity or another. Letters of support are welcomed from city organizations, whether citizen or otherwise. And so we were asked for a supporting letter in favor of this grant to enhance some of Denver's Denver's multimodal work of a couple of particular projects. We did vote on sending a letter and did deliver that letter to the department as part of their application packet for the grant. So, I mean, everyone on the line here is aware of this. I'm assuming no questions, but just wanted to state that for the public. We will be able to post that with other documents we have from the board. With that, Michelle, I think we're ready to move into public comment.
As I mentioned earlier, no one signed up for public comment today,
Oh,
which
sorry,
was
that's not
rare.
on. Yeah.
But I mean, no one sent an email in, but we have 15 people attending the meeting.
Mhm.
So if you want, we could maybe, we have a very packed agenda, but if you want, we can open it up if anybody would like to have a couple minutes of the board's time. If you're over in the attendees, raise your hand and I'll know if you'd like to speak or not. I have Joanna Miller. I'm going to admit Joanna Miller in. I mean, Joanna. Sorry, Joanna. Hold on one second. Joanna, let us know when you've joined us. There you are. Welcome.
Welcome. I haven't been
Joanna?
able to hear your audio yet, Joanna, if you've said something.
I don't think I saw her and then she disappeared.
I see her video, Joanna Miller, but I can't hear her.
Are you talking about me? Tangier.
No.
Joanna, we can see you, but we can't hear you.
Is that working?
Yes, gotcha
Yes,
now.
yes.
Anything?
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Perfect. I got a thumbs
Yes.
up. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Joanna Miller. I'm a highway design engineer with Kimley Horn, who's an engineering firm doing work in Denver. I had heard about this board recently, and I've been in the industry for about 9 years. Very interested in helping out the city of Denver where I can, as I do sit here and do work here. So just interested in listening in, learning, and if there's any questions that I can be of help with. I've got 9 years of experience in the highway design field. I've seen a lot of projects and would be interested in doing what I can. So thank you.
Is there anyone else? Thank you, Joanna. Is there anyone else in the attendees? I have Amy. Amy, I will promote you to panelist. Let us know when you've joined.
Hi guys, my name is Amy Kenry, and I just wanted to say hello and thank you for discussing the I-25 and Broadway interchange project, and that I hope to share this recording with the rest of our neighbors here in West Wash Park. I'm the RNO president over there, so thanks a lot.
Sure thing. Very welcome. I think we're all looking forward to it.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up, Jonathan. So I'll
All right.
turn it back to you.
So yeah, we're a little early in the agenda, but next up is our report from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Leadership. Who should we be looking to for that today? That's Earl.
Yes, Earl. And I was going to say something eloquent about that, but yes, Earl is going to give us the update today.
Yeah, I was just going to start off and just mention that here on Wednesday, the 14th, the proposed FY23 budget is going to be released to the public. So just want to put that on everyone's radar. And I know this team here typically provides comment to that and review to that, particularly around the transportation and infrastructure space. So I think that here over the coming month, we're going to have, in addition to that, city council hearings and briefings and things like that. So if you guys want to sort of marshal together and take a look at that and then maybe go through your typical process for how you handle the annual budget, that'd be fantastic.
So you're saying cancel our weekend plans. It's gonna be a big one. Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, honestly.
We've got a little time. All right, good. All right, that's I presume that's all for today, Earl.
Just from what I have, but Nick, do you have anything else?
No, I think that was the big news. We'll make sure that this board gets a copy of that as soon as it's made public.
Awesome. And Chris, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Earl, I don't know if it's possible, but if it is, could we get a schedule of like when you're going to be going to Ludi and all the committee meetings for the budget? Actually, now thinking about it, it's a separate board or committee meeting through council, correct? That you have to go through for budget?
Yes, I'll take that since Earl is relatively new to the Denver way.
Sorry, Earl, I completely, I always think you're a seasoned pro at this, my man. So
He performs like it. Yeah, I tell you what, Chris, that's a great idea. And we could, when we send out that budget, we'll include like, here are the next steps when we'll be in committee, because I think we have those scheduled now. I don't have it right in front of me, but yeah, that's a good idea, Chris. We'll do that.
yeah, just be helpful for us to see how the process is going. And again, where we can support in those meetings if needed, we're here for you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the group before we head into one of our primary agenda items for today? Sounds like no. And I do see, I know we're a little early on the agenda, but I do see Deb, Mike, and Karen here. So I'm assuming we have who we need to kick off our discussion of the South Broadway and I-25 improvement projects. Is that right? Are we missing anyone that we need to wait for?
I think we're good. This is Karen. I'm just turning my video on and was not fast enough. Mike, I'm hoping, excuse me, that I'm going to be doing a little bit of the talking. Mike, I'm hoping that you could bring up the slideshow so that I have so I can see the faces of the people that I'm talking to, because as you all know, in our lovely world, as soon as you start sharing a show, you can't see anyone's faces. And I'd love to be actually talking to you all. Mike, can you confirm or deny that you can bring up the quick show that we've got?
Yeah, I'm working on it, Karen. I should have it up here in just a minute or so.
I know, I was trying to text you. I just wasn't fast enough. In the meantime, I will do a quick introduction. I'm Karen Good. I see Deb Turner is here with me, as well as Mike Harmer. I'm really happy to see a lot of familiar faces. Deb, Mike, and I met with a couple folks and from the advisory board to prep. I know Paul and Jake, am I remembering? There's a third person that we met with. I can't think of who, apologies. But we did, was that Jonathan? That was John.
It was me, and I think also Ian as well. Yeah.
Thank you. There we go. Maybe not Paul. We met with a couple of people and we got, we did a little bit of a dry run and asked what you were looking for. So I just want to do a little preemptive info and say that one of the things that we know you're interested in, but we decided it was too big of a topic to do Broadway I-25 and how traffic analysis works all in one meeting and allow you to, breathe, absorb, and get to the rest of your agenda. So we're going to focus tonight, this afternoon, on Broadway I-25 and some of the questions around that. And then we'll set a more in-depth dive into traffic analysis and how that works with NEPA. I feel like Tangier is smiling because she's so excited about this. And Aileen, I know it's great seeing your faces, but I know that's a really complex topic and I want to be able to get to that as well, but I want to focus on I-25 Broadway interchange reconstruction right now. So far, so good, everyone? Can everyone give me a thumbs up? You can see Mike's screen. Can anyone give me a thumbs up?
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Thanks for being here, Karen. It's Tangier.
I can tell, I recognize your voice. Tangier and I worked together for well over a decade on a variety of projects, as well as Aileen. So anyhow, I'm going to jump in. A lot of you have probably heard either a little tidbits or a lot of little tidbits on South Broadway, I-25, and some may have heard a lot about it. So I'm going to try to do a fairly high level overview and we can dive deeper as we go. And I don't know exactly how you run the show if you want us to give the full presentation, but it's about 10 slides. And if we want to stop on any, if it's okay, I'm happy to dive in. Mike and Deb are here as subject matter experts. I'm more of a generalist. So if that works, I'll hop into the next slide. I take silence as a yes. Wonderful. So we wanted to take a little bit of a story. Mike, if we could go to slide 2 of how we got here.
Oops.
Oh,
Sorry.
2 and 3 and 4, 5, and we're done.
Sorry, it's a little bit different from Teams. My
Okay.
apologies.
Oh, good. So I know a lot of you are familiar with what happened in 2006 and 2008, at least from big picture standpoint, that there was the Valley Highway EIS, and that EIS was a monster in terms of environmental documents. It went over a lot of pieces and parts of the Valley Highway from Logan to 6th, and included a lot of tidbits that are above and beyond the interchange. So that's a monster doc. And then
Explain real quick what EIS means and EA.
Sure. So an EIS is an environmental impact statement. You can see the pretty little graphic there on the cover. It is a environmental policy, NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act document that goes over improvements to an area when they involve federal funding. So the EIS, I think of, I've been talking about bears recently as sort of the Papa Bear. It includes everything under the sun and some things that are 10, 20, 30 years out. And then an EA is sort of that working team. The EA is when you dive into a smaller section of something. It's an environmental assessment. It's generally when you dive into a smaller section of something from a big monster environmental impact statement. In some cases, you've got a big monster project and it has to happen all at once. In many cases, you've got this big monster project and it can be split out into phases and stages and all kinds of different timeline segments, generally because they are really incredibly expensive and really have a lot of different moving parts. So in 2008, we wrapped up this South Broadway EA, environmental assessment, that focused in on the north-south improvements on Broadway between Exposition and Arizona, and really looking at the interchange as well as South Broadway and the pieces and parts there. So that's a little bit more of a focused document. And we've done a lot since then. Any questions so far just on 2006, 2008 documents? Okay. Mike, if you could go to the next, and sorry, the one key thing to note in that previous slide that I trust you could not read, but there are different, we wanted to make sure you knew that there's a difference in the preferred alternative between that 2006 and the 2008 document. And the 2008 document, which takes that finer grain focus into a smaller area, that preferred alternative supersedes that big picture preferred alternative from 2006, just to be clear, because we've had some questions about that. Like, why do things look so different from the 2006 document? Well, there was a 2008 document and more. So with that, Mike, let's go to the next slide that goes into, again, this is from 2008, just big picture, looking at what preferred alternative there and some of the different, there were many other alternatives that were analyzed, but just to give you a few, I know you, you know, probably don't have your magnifying glasses on here, but we always compare. We looked at, I think, about 30 different alternatives in this 2008 document. And no action is always something that we look at, that what you see, this level 3B screening results there. gives you an idea of when it was down to a few different alternatives. So not asking you to read those, but just to give an idea that there were many different phases of analysis, looked at a lot of different alternatives. And in any case, we always look at a no action and compare that to the action alternatives. And we're looking at a lot of different things in terms of multimodal connectivity, neighborhood impact, traffic, et cetera. So our preferred alternative here, which is pretty close to what we are doing, and we'll go into a little more detail there, provided the greatest benefit and the least impact. So it minimized minimizing that regional cut through traffic, enhancing bike ped access, mobility and safety, and improving traffic safety. So I think our next slide kind of dives into a little bit of the changes to the layout from that 2008 document to now. So Mike can go into details if we need to, but the alignment of that northern access road, and Mike is showing with his mouse there, the alignment of that access road into the RTD station. And that was through further conversations with RTD, if I recall correctly, as well as looking at the detailed safety analysis. Somebody's got a question in the chat. When I say preferred alternative, whose preference are you referring to? And that is a preference from community input, as well as feedback from our federal highways and all of the different entities that are reviewing, community council and traffic engineering, are federal highways folks. So Aileen, yes, this is what you're seeing on the left is the preferred alternative in 2008. And what you're seeing on the right, the figure on your right, we're going over what the changes are from the 2008 preferred alternative to what we have today, those refinements. So one was the alignment of the northern access road into the Broadway station. Another was the alignment, and I'm gonna sort of go over these and then hit some of the questions that are coming up in chat. Alignment and configuration of the Broadway Kentucky off-ramp intersection, additional parking lot in the interior of the new on-ramp to southbound I-25, and deletion of the multimodal path in this area, and replacement of the multimodal path on the south side of Exposition between Lincoln and Broadway with a sidewalk. And that was something that was worked out with the West Wash Park Neighborhood Association, and addition of the extension of the Broadway cycle track center to Exposition. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the 2008 preferred alternative to where we are today. And do want to pause because I did see some things popping up in chat. Aileen, did I answer your question?
Yeah, just to clarify, so this plan that's getting implemented today is based off of feedback in the preferred alternative decision from 2008. That's all I'm trying to clarify.
You know what?
I think
let's hold on that actually. Okay. Because I have some more information on what's happened since 2008 in terms of analysis. This, and maybe we should actually, Mike, can we jump to that? Because I think that's a question we can always come back. So what's happened since 2008? Here we go. It's almost like I was reading your mind. We know that this is a question from a lot of people, and a lot has happened. So we had a reevaluation, and I know this is painful because the project is in segments. So segments 1 and 2 happened in 2013. Reevaluation for right-of-way acquisition for segment 3, and Mike is circling, with the red segment. Sorry, phase 1 and 2 are up top. And Mike, I might have you talk a little bit more about the phases and segments after I get over this, because Mike can.
Fair enough.
Mike can give a lot of great detail there, but so we had this reevaluation for segments 1 and 2 in October of 13, reevaluation for right-of-way in segment 3, reevaluation for segments 3, phase 1, 19. So there's been a lot. I can bore you with all this, but I think I'd love for Mike to talk a little bit about segments 1, you know, some of these bullet point locations. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, with the first bullet point, it really covers the areas that are in green and in blue. Those segments were constructed and finished towards the end of 2017. Since then, we've been working on the red area, which is what we've termed as segment 3.
And so, Mike, to interrupt you, that's the work that was done. So what was done in October of 13 has actually already been constructed.
That's correct. Up to this point right here, just south of the existing Kentucky intersection.
And the things that we're about to jump into, that's 19 to 22, that's what's coming up or has recently been completed.
That's correct. In 19, we did the design and then we followed through with construction of exposition and some work on Broadway that was finished up in 2021. And what we're talking about implementing next is everything that you see here in red, basically the interchange improvements and reconstructing Broadway from the south side of existing Kentucky to the north to a point that's about midway between Exposition and Ohio.
So those are the things that are, you know, reevaluation either just was completed in 21 or is being reviewed right now, September of 22, correct?
That's correct.
Except for the kind of that point out that highlighted yellow area, Mike, with the exception of that, even though that's kind of in red, but it has a yellow highlight on it, where that is not part of this project.
Right, that's core, and we'll dive into that a little bit later. This gives you an idea of what has happened since that 2008, because I think there's a lot of concern that we worked in 2008 and haven't done anything since then, and we're just building off of what happened in 2008, and that is not the case. Anytime we're moving forward, we're doing reevaluation and reanalysis. Jonathan, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, clarifying question for that. I'm just curious, like, what elements of the EA are reevaluated when one of these reevaluations is done? What actually? You don't do the whole study again, so I'm just curious what does get looked at.
Mike, do you want to dive into that at a high level? We're looking at things like, have any rules and regs changed? Have any design criteria changed? What have any major changes happened in terms of, let's say there was a brand new Walmart constructed, let's say RTD moved their station. Let's say RTD didn't exist anymore. You're looking at all those big picture things. And Mike, I'll let you go into a little bit more detail there.
Yeah, it's a lot of those big picture things. In addition to that, it's taking a look at historic resources. Obviously, time has gone by. In this case, about 14 years since the original EA was completed. So, you know, a big part of historic is the age of the structures and whether or not they contribute to an adjacent historic district. So that's another step. Another step is because of the passage of time, we've also updated the system level study, which looks at the traffic impacts and make sure that what is being proposed accommodates that future traffic volume, in this case, 2050 traffic volumes. And those volumes, from a large part, are generated by DRCOG based upon development and growth patterns that they see in the area.
And I thought I saw a couple questions coming up. Michelle, I don't know, are you moderating the questions or should I just take a peek at chat?
I guess I would actually, from that perspective, Jake and I can pause to feed questions. I'm wondering, would you prefer raised hands? Would you prefer us asking questions as you go, or would you rather say finish your last couple slides and return? I'm not sure how you.
Let's, as I was saying before, let's try to ask questions as I go. And then if per Aileen's question, I said, hold on, let's go to the next slide. I think it addresses some of those. If you'll give us the time to switch, or if I ask to hold because we have it coming up. But yeah, questions now is dandy. So I'll let you, if you could moderate, that's helpful so I can.
Absolutely. So we've had two come in that I think are fundamentally along the same lines, where I think it comes down to questions about criteria. I think, Mike, as you just noted, we say, hey, have there been new developments? Are there level of traffic analysis changes from DRCOG, et cetera? I think both Lucia's questions and Tanger's questions get to the question of, well, what if our fundamental criteria have changed? Not the data as viewed from the perspective of the criteria we had in 2008, but the city and county of Denver has changed values, has changed planning, has changed preferences. And there's also just been, sort of new movements in the world of traffic analysis and modeling where, for instance, induced demand used to not be accounted in a lot of models as recently as a decade ago. And the notion of sort of cars as a precept, this traffic will come no matter what we do, however we build, has changed as a concept. So Tangier and Lucia, let me know if you'd like to clarify anything here, but it sounds like the question is, as we are reevaluating, is there any credence given to fundamentally changing models or city and county criteria for what merits multimodal success, something along those lines?
Absolutely. And the city, as you all well know, really has put multimodal connectivity at the forefront of our work. And happily, actually, the work in 2008 actually already had really put a huge focus on multimodal. So I would say in 2008, it was a pioneering document in the amount of focus it laid into the multimodal as a means of minimizing the impact of this interchange and focusing, because this is providing access to an RTD station, both for the neighborhood and for users coming from I-25. This has always been a multimodal focus and has always had a really big emphasis on how we can improve that multimodal access to the RTD station, which is obviously multimodal, part of the multimodal framework. So that's a big picture there in terms of this was already a pioneering document. As you saw in the changes, we have worked with the neighborhood association to make sure that the pedestrian connectivity and the bike connectivity serves the neighborhood and current needs as closely as possible. So those are big things that were taken into account and we've continued to work through both with our Denver Moves bike system planning, also Denver Moves PEDs, Denver Moves Bikes, Denver Moves PEDs, our pilot project with bike lane and facility on Broadway and carrying that through here. So there's a lot that has happened from that perspective that we have integrated along the way. Mike and Deb, did I miss anything big? And I'll jump to the greenhouse gases in a second too.
The only thing I was going to point out is like a lot of the improvements are being done on Lincoln and Broadway, bike lanes, sidewalks, but a lot of safety, because both Lincoln and Broadway are on our high injury network. And we had, I think, 5 intersections that were considered specific targets on that. So a lot of the improvements are actually targeting safety at those intersections too, by moving the Kentucky north. And so we have one intersection there. We have a lot of accidents in that intersection at the Ohio Broadway, and then coming off of northbound ramp at I-25, there are a lot of accidents there. So these improvements target a lot of safety for the neighborhood itself and on our local roadway network, plus what Karen was talking about, extending the protected bike lane that's being built on Broadway down into the station, adding extra bike or sidewalks too. Did I miss anything, Mike?
I think you covered it well, Deb.
And I did see a question about the greenhouse gas mitigation in the transportation bill that was passed last year. And the changes to the greenhouse gas mitigation do not affect ongoing projects. So that does not, I don't know if you all got to see the FAQs that we sadly just got to this morning. So you probably didn't, but that is covered in there along with a lot of other detailed questions. Jonathan, did that go out to the group, or because of our tardiness, did it just?
It did make it to the group, but not until about midday today. So
Right. I figured you wouldn't be able to review that all, but some of the questions you may find a more detailed answer in that FAQ. We certainly want to address them here, but there's also some more detailed answers and a lot of questions in that FAQ that may help as well. If you do think of a question at midnight, and you're welcome to email us, but you're also welcome to look at the FAQ. The answer might be there too. Okay, other questions from the chat, and did that get to Lucia? I think it was it Lucia and
Lucia, Tangier, is there anything you'd like to add?
There's so much I can add. The whole thing is just an unmitigated disaster. I mean, pedestrians having to sort of zigzag their way across. I don't see how it's going to be safer for pedestrians, especially with a slip lane into the neighborhood. I just don't. When this project was conceived, the way we thought about it was all about for the convenience of drivers and saving a few seconds off of their commute times, at the expense of inner city neighborhoods. It was the same program that had been going on for the previous 40 years and maybe 50 years. But, the way we think about freeways and expanding and prioritizing vehicles over other modes of private vehicles over other modes of transportation just seems to be very dated. And it seems like we need to, if we're going to do anything, we need to bring this project into 2022 and not leave it in 2008. A lot of things have changed, greenhouse gases, our attitudes, even the neighborhood. You may have had a discussion with the neighborhood, but that neighborhood has had a great deal of turnover since then. And people don't feel the same as what the people who originally you talked to about. I mean, we hear it all the time. Sorry, I'll stop now.
No, thank you. Thank you for those, for your thoughts, and we appreciate that. And do want to let you know that these reevaluations do also include input from the community. That is something that is part of the reevaluation. And again, I do want to emphasize that this is really a project that is intended to focus on those safety elements and working on improving pedestrian and bicycle connectivity as well as safety, and working on making sure that the crossings are safe and that we are improving access to the RTD station as well as access along South Broadway.
Karen, this is Gary Johnson. I do have a kind of a fundamental question about the purpose and need. Even back in 2006, I don't know that I've ever seen that document, and how that purpose and need has been carried through this whole process, and whether or not reevaluations ever change that purpose and need. And so that a discussion in that regard may help satisfy some of these other questions that have been brought up by the board.
So purpose and need is always part of a reevaluation. You look back to your purpose and need and make sure that it still fits the needs and the goals of the community. Mike, I don't have that at hand, and I don't know if you have that handy. I can bring it up and give you a tidbit. I don't think, Mike, is one of our hidden slides the purpose and need? I know we have a slide that we've had a lot of presentations on this. I know we have a purpose and needs slide somewhere, but I don't think it's tucked away here.
I don't think we have it in this one,
Okay.
Karen.
Let me see if I can jump to that. But the big picture is that is always something that you look at. That's your starting point of any reevaluation, just checking over, like, are we still good here? Does this still fit? So that is a conversation. And by miracle of all miracles, I have pulled it up. My computer has not crashed yet. So that is great. And let me see if I can get to it really quickly, just to give you a little bullet point summary of the purpose and need. Almost there, I promise. So many pages introducing the document. Scrolling as fast as I can. Wait, a table of contents. Okay, so purpose and need. Major needs include lack of connectivity and inadequate width of bicycle and pedestrian facilities in the study area. Projected local and regional growth will result in increased traffic congestion and increase the likelihood of traffic cutting through adjacent neighborhoods. And South Broadway is currently experiencing peak hour congestion that is expected to worsen. So as I said before, in my mind, this is a document that in 2008 really highlight some things that a lot of 2008 documents did not. Reducing that cut through traffic and creating connectivity where there is none, and addressing an inadequate width of bike and pedestrian facilities in the study area. Well, somebody has something to say about that. And it looks like, Aileen, you have a raised hand. Oh, you're muted, you're muted.
Sorry, I was eating, so I had my video off. I mean, Karen, I've been in this field for so long. I mean, I know that in 2008, we didn't even have a protected bike lane network in 2008. Right. We didn't even, I'm with Lucia on this. I'm really struggling. With all respect, I think we're trying to make excuses for a plan that made sense maybe in 2008. But I kind of disagree with some of the comments that you made, or your interpretation of the needs statements, because what I heard were two statements about relieving congestion and accommodating growth by expanding roadway access to vehicles. And I have to say, I question the statement about the bike. Can you repeat it? Because I want to hear it one more time. I really questioned the interpretation of it.
And Karen, I think your subsequent slides delve more into the multimodal elements of this, correct?
They do, and I can also, instead of reading it, I can share my screen and show you the bullet point.
Whatever, honestly, whatever. Yeah, just so I don't want to misunderstand something, but I heard a comment about the need for the bike and pedestrian infrastructure to be widened. But I have a hard time believing that statement, because we were not even talking about enhanced bike infrastructure at that
let
point.
me bring it up, Mike. This is going to stop your screen sharing, but we'll pop back to you. So what I was reading, and unfortunately there is a page break in the middle of it, which is annoying. So major needs to be addressed, identified through traffic and engineering analysis, public involvement, and agency scoping include currently experiencing peak hour congestion that is expected to worsen. So just a basic statement. projected local and regional growth will result in increased traffic congestion and increase the likelihood of traffic cutting through the adjacent neighborhoods. And currently there is a lack of connectivity and inadequate width of bike and pedestrian facilities in the study area. So I am just reading it. I'm not interpreting it. I'm simply reading it and bringing it up. And in my mind, I think it's really great that a document from 2008 identified not just the lack of pedestrian facilities, but the lack of bike facilities and the need for improved bike facilities. So again, zero interpretation. I was simply reading. I'm going to stop sharing and I am going to let Mike take the screen back so we can go over some of that, what Nick was saying about. I want to jump into some of those improvements. And Mike, sorry to bop you off and make you go back.
I think my comments were more focused on the interpretation of the comments about the congestion, improving the congestion, because it's clear from the document that the large majority of the purpose is to relieve congestion. So I think that's where the interpretation comes in. I take back what I said about the bicycle infrastructure width. I see it, and thank you for sharing that document so that we could see those statements word for word. That was helpful.
Sure. And then this, we were gonna, give me a second to go through the rest of our presentation if it addresses any of the questions. Jake, I see your hand there. So we talked a little bit as Mike was talking through the NEPA review and the timing of those reevaluations of, what's been designed, what's been constructed. So Mike, do you want to dive into a little bit about the final design and construction of Broadway, Arizona to Kentucky, and just kind of circle where the color and where it is, just so folks understand what's already happened, just to repeat that a little bit. And you're muted, sorry.
I saw that. Yeah, I mean, here's the physical progress that we've made in addition to all the reevaluations that we've done. That includes the construction of the Arizona to Kentucky piece, which is the segment 1 and segment 2.
And that's blue.
So the blue and the green.
Blue and green, there we go.
And then we've got this little sliver up here with segment 3, and we're calling it phase 1. That was done in July of 21. And now what we're working on, then after that, we've been preparing for construction, including the demolition of South Broadway, the old Hurricane Drain building. And shortly hereafter, we will be taking down the buildings between 755 and 765 South Broadway. Those are on the west side of Broadway, just north of the Ohio Access Road that goes into the station. And lastly, we're moving forward with design and construction of segment 3, phase 2, which is this large red area. And that's construction is expected to start in early 2023.
And then let's jump ahead, Mike, where we talk a little bit about some of these improvements, and this hopefully changes the orientation, but
north is to the left.
Yeah, hopefully is helpful from the conversation of what's happened and what's happening here, the completed improvements in phase 1 and proposed improvements in phase 2. Mike was just talking about this. So Mike, do you want to dive into this? Zooms in a little bit in terms of what's happened and what's happening coming right up. Would that be, can you dive into that a little bit, Mike?
Absolutely. So what's coming up is the new connection into the station. Actually, this slide is a little bit out of date. It's actually Bannock Street, which goes into the station at about the same point here. This multi-use trail still comes up to that location. Then we have the new on-ramp to I-25, and that new on-ramp, instead of making a left to get onto I-25, we actually take that traffic off of Broadway, putting them on a new ramp, which goes under Broadway or under I-25 and then up and over Broadway. So when we talk about that congestion, we're actually taking those vehicles off of Broadway and putting them on a new elevated ramp.
And Mike, that also reduces pedestrian conflict, correct?
That is correct. Further, we're consolidating.
Wait, I'm
What's-
sorry. How does it reduce pedestrian conflict? Can you?
Because it's elevated, it's above grade.
But there's still a street going through.
But it's elevated.
No. Broadway is still going through.
It is still going through, and it remains largely the same size as it is today. We are not adding lanes in this area. We are not adding lanes on Broadway. But we are taking the traffic that would normally be stacked past Exposition all the way up under the interstate and putting them on this ramp.
The thing is, when cars are stacked, they're stopped.
Agreed.
And so when cars are stopped, they're not going to run you over.
Well, I think what Mike is saying is the elevated portion is not a pedestrian area. It removes that conflict between those turning vehicles that are turning onto 25 and crossing Broadway. They are up in the air and no longer crossing Broadway.
Correct. Other improvements include consolidating the I-25 off-ramp Kentucky intersection. By doing so, we've eliminated one signal at this location here.
And that's a signal, if I recall, Mike, which is a challenge because it's so close to the next signal that sometimes people don't see it. And there have been pedestrian conflicts in that area and a lot of confusion. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's on the city's vision or on our high injury network. A lot of folks stop waiting for this signal, but they perceive the second signal and proceed. And so there's a lot of rear end crashes in this area as well. So reconstruction of Broadway and Lincoln through existing Kentucky to where we left off with the phase 1 project, and then improvements to Ohio, and that includes the signalization of the off-ramp, which has been requested by the community for some time now. So that's the bulk of the improvements.
And let's jump ahead. I think we have a timeline next. If I'm remembering correctly. Brain still works. So we've gone over a lot of this already, just to put this in timeline scale where we are. Mike just went over some of the things that were completed and that we are about to complete in terms of those redesign elements to the interchange. And then I think the big question is what happens next with some of the other pieces and parts. So let's jump to that and then we can go back if we need to on anything else. So a lot of folks have been asking about segment 4. That's in green here. On a previous map, Deb called it out. It was in yellow. And that is the project requirement that needs to be built per the NEPA preferred alternative, but we have zero funding for it. So we have zero time frame. We have not designed and we have not done any property acquisition, nor would we until funding is actually secured. So that's one that unfortunately we don't have more info there. And I know it's very challenging and it's very personal. We're talking about people's homes and it's a situation that we're in, and we are sharing as much information as we have there. And then I think we do have a timeline slide that goes with this, and it gives you an idea of, we'll be working to identify funding. It is at this point, the way some of these funding cycles work, we're looking at 24, we're looking at 25, and we just don't know when that funding would occur. Once it is identified, that's when we would determine if there's reevaluation needed. And based on that, then reevaluate and move forward with final design and construction. So I know there are a bunch of raised hands. Mike, I think the only other slide we have here is our question slide, right?
You're correct.
Excellent.
Yeah, with that, then I'll take order here. Jake, I know you've had your hand up for some time, so why don't we kick off with you?
Yeah. So thank you, Karen and Mike, for coming. I know you were great at getting this together during the prep session, so really appreciate that. And I know you've even added some slides to address some of these components. So really appreciative there. I guess what I'm trying to understand, and maybe this is what's being echoed by others, is the I believe I feel the results of some real safety thinking, right? Like I can see it in the plan. I think there's places where there are pedestrian conflicts that there were not, that there were before, that are not in this updated plan. But those conflicts, while they've gone down, are not necessarily to the benefit of a cyclist or a pedestrian, and that's what I'm struggling with a little bit. Yes, we've removed conflict points, and we've talked about widening, which I'm kind of struggling with a little bit, to be honest, on some of these sidewalks, because we're talking about widening the sidewalk to 5 feet, which is the minimum required in Denver since the 1980s, best I can tell. So I don't know if that doesn't feel like an accomplishment if we're meeting the standard on the purple ones. Those are not even commercial corridor size. Those are just standard residential size sidewalks per, the most recent Adam Phipps signed off rules and regs. And then I think what we're also doing, this is a hard intersection to cross, and a lot of that has nothing to do with this project team. It dates back to work that was done on this 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s kind of era. This is a complicated intersection, no doubt, but it is really kind of hard to cross from like the south side of Ohio to the RTD station. There's a lot of street crossings there, and what we're doing is we're in some of these cases requiring 4, 5, 7 intersection crossings, right, to get to the train station in a 2 to 3 block area. And I think that's tough to digest, just no matter how we toss it up. I think that's a lot of interactions that, while there are less, they're just different less. And then I think there's a lot of use of multi-use paths that I think people don't really feel safe on multi-use paths. I think there's a lot of struggle I have with just how little bike infrastructure is in here. I'm really unclear on how you get from the Broadway bike lane, which is supposed to be this pinnacle of bike infrastructure in Denver, to the RTD station. Like, do I go in the crosswalk? Do I dodge Granny taking bags home from the grocery store? And I'm on the sidewalk, and then I'm in the crosswalk, so I'm at risk from right hooks from vehicles because I'm on a path rather than a bike lane, so I'm not visible to cars. So that's just where I'm struggling, is I don't understand how you get north-south on a bike here, like period. And 2, I don't understand how you do it without a lot of conflict points with either other pedestrians. It feels like we're saying, yeah, this is the Broadway bike lane, but like cars are allowed sometimes, which is what we're doing in the sidewalks. It's like pedestrians use this infrastructure, and then there's high-speed vehicles here, and there's no real north-south route on the east side or the south side of some of these streets.
Let me, Mike, I think you might be able to help talk to, at least take a step back and talk through how a biker ped moves through this area, and talk a little bit about the 5-foot sidewalk areas and all that. If we could, I think, start, Jake, if it's okay, with kind of a walkthrough and a bike through of how you would get from point A to point B. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think one big question is, how do I get from the South Broadway bike lane, right? This huge investment bike infrastructure, to eastbound Mississippi, right? If I'm a cyclist, there's some questions I have there.
Okay, Mike, is that something that you can help us with?
Yeah, I can certainly help you with that. a big part of that migration, there's a number of different choices, and we purposely built additional multi-use paths so you can go a number of different ways. So if you were coming down Broadway in the new cycle track that ends at Exposition, you have a choice to make. You either cross over Broadway and take the multi-use path that's adjacent to Broadway all the way up to the Mississippi Path, or alternately, you could take it down Exposition and through the station and get there either through Kentucky or when the Broadway station redevelopment occurs.
But we're now
another
introducing,
path that takes you up there.
we're now introducing 4 intersection crossings as a cyclist that, you wouldn't have if you were in the travel lane.
No, you would honestly, even if you were in the travel lane, you'd still have the same number of conflicts.
Yeah, well, the crossings are also pretty awkward for cyclists. Obviously, there's a lot of problems here, and I appreciate everything you've done. It's still a little hard for me to understand all the things, but it really is. You couldn't come up with a more, a route that didn't kind of go straight. As you kind of followed your cursor pretty quickly, but if you went carefully, you get off, you have to stop here, then you have to stop there, and you do that. I don't know if there's any other way to do it, but all these intersections so close together seems like that would be problematic. I don't know if you're going to time the light so you cross both or what, but just that little intersection by the first light on the right, that's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
what you're doing there to get across.
If I can phrase it this way, as a cyclist, I now have to cross one of the widest streets in Denver twice to go straight.
And you're saying crossing at Exposition to go to the cycle track, or are you saying if you're coming from the neighborhood, you're crossing Lincoln and then Broadway?
No, you're in what we just got shown, you're crossing Broadway twice. I'm actually not really clear on how you go the Lincoln route, because you'd be riding on a sidewalk, which is illegal in Denver at that point, not a multi-use path.
No, I was talking about going down Exposition. I was asking if you were talking about coming from the neighborhood down Exposition, and if you were talking about crossing Lincoln on Exposition, then crossing Broadway on Exposition. I was just trying to get clarity on.
No, I think that's a route we should talk about potentially too, but I'm saying if you're coming down the cycle track down South Broadway, right, which again, safest bike infrastructure we've proposed in the city.
And then you cross Broadway once at Exposition.
Yeah, and then you cross back over to go in a straight line. You do this like complicated zigzag over a high injury network street, right? Like that just feels not good. Like I know that's not transportation terms, but like that's scary. And I think it's really hard to make the pitch that that's safety. Like it's just really challenging.
And you're talking about crossing the ramp there. So not crossing over Broadway, but going along Broadway on the.
If you're in the Broadway cycle track, you have to cross over all the lanes of Broadway and then all the lanes the other way to go straight. Like
Right where Mike's cursor is now as your second crossing.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, I mean, and here's the thing, if you're down at Kentucky and you're crossing back over to get to the Mississippi side, you're now crossing effectively Broadway and Lincoln, two dangerous streets, right? And I think that's for a straight line.
And Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about that second signal that we're talking about right now, right there?
Are you talking this one?
Yep.
Okay. And, so what the intent of this signal is to control traffic that is trying to get onto the off-ramp or onto the new on-ramp, excuse me. So they're effectively metered before this crossing.
And I think, sorry, Mike, if you could talk about that from the perspective of a cyclist going on that bike facility, how that works.
Yeah, from the lime green, right? Like that's your starting point if you're in the cycle track.
So this would be a crossing of the ramp. There are 2 crossings of the ramp, but these will be timed together so that traffic is stopped here and here so that the cyclist can make a continuous crossing. Yes, it looks a little funky. And that's, given the complex geometry of this area and trying to get traffic off of Broadway, that's one of the challenges that we've had. There are still those street crossings. RTD owns all this land over here. And then an adjacent developer owns the former gate site over here. So there are limited opportunities. As things develop over the next 10 years, the city continues to exact those type of improvements from adjacent developers. And at some point, I think we will have that more direct connection, but it'll be through the station.
I mean,
Yeah.
but
And
if
that,
I have a direct connection to South Denver, right, which is, equally part of our community, right? I guess I'm trying to understand if we really considered mobility and safety here, why not the cycle track through the intersection and further onto South Broadway, right? Like it seems like that wasn't a considered alternative. We're throwing bikes onto the sidewalk, which is dangerous. I mean, not a lot of new plans have that as a plan. And if we're really talking about a safety alternative, I don't understand how this is it. I think a cycle track going through with its own bike signals, that's a safety option. I didn't see that as an alternative. I think there's also some pedestrian crossings that seem pretty questionable to me as well. But sorry, I know I'm dominating, but I just am really not understanding how this is the safety choice, because I feel like we know the safety choice for Broadway. We've pitched the rest of Broadway, it's the cycle track. So as part of this alternative, we could have it be in one of these phases that we extend that cycle track through this intersection. And it doesn't seem that's been considered, which I think is the safety option.
and you want to talk a little bit about the cycle track and what you have looked at there, and what some of the other alternatives you've looked at here would be?
I hate to interrupt. Wait, can I ask something, please? It's
certainly
related to.
If I can make just one clarifying comment.
Yep,
we're talking
thanks.
about this multi-use trail. We're not talking about it largely being up against the curb and gutter. We're actually installing an amenity zone where we can to create an additional 5-foot buffer. So we are creating that separation between motorists and cyclists and pedestrians.
And Mike, does that also increase the visibility of those pedestrians and cyclists?
It does.
Okay, and Tangier, so sorry, thank you.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, hearing that there's going to be a buffer that's important. But so the area where the traffic is going to be metered before getting onto the on-ramp, cars will be metered.
They'll be stopped. When you think of a ramp meter, that ramp meter is actually up in this area here.
Can you, Mike? It's kind of more like where that's that signal is that we were talking about earlier.
The zigzag signal, for the lack of a Ohio-ish signal there.
Yes.
Mike probably used an engineering term that, most people assume metering has to do with highway. Like getting onto a highway, you have the signals there and they call it metering, but I think he just used that interchangeably with having a signal there that stops the traffic so that.
Okay, so it's not those lights that like everybody's just waiting to gun it to get onto the on-ramp.
No, it's a signalized intersection. That was a poor choice of words. The actual flashing beacon type one that you're talking about is actually up here near where it says southbound.
And that's in ramp world. That's not in our world.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification. I'm, with Jake and Jonathan here. It's a challenge.
I'm sorry to clarify that comment about the lights. I was also trying to figure out as you were talking through the description of that path with Jake. There's a signal. If you were going southbound on Broadway, you turn right onto one of those 2 lanes to get on the highway. There are 2 crossings near there. Which of those are signalized and where's the signal?
I don't have that. I can certainly get you that information.
I guess the question is
Um,
really is like, are those two lanes?
They are two separate
right?
signals.
They are two separate signals. They will be stopped when pedestrians and bicyclists and et cetera are crossing.
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
And that's something we can follow up and kind of zoom in. So, and these are, we try to be prepared as possible for the questions you all could have, but we've got a lot of graphics and we could bore the heck out of you with a lot of really detailed engineering plans. So we wanted to have this conversation, find out where the additional questions were and do some follow-up we can do a follow-up of zoom in of this signal and to show where the cars are stopped, where the detail, more detail of where the pedestrians and cyclists are of that amenity area, all of that. Apology, we have a lot of info and we wanted to be able to have more of a conversation with you all and do some feedback after with details instead of just bombarding you and talking at you. So again, apologies, we don't have everything with us currently, but we certainly can get you some more follow-up info there. And I want
with the remainder of the time we have, we don't have too much more on the topic. I think we've covered pretty closely some of the design of these sidewalks, essentially, and some multi-use paths, some of the changes that were made to segments 2 and 3, to segments 1 and 2 as they were being constructed, and segment 3 as it was being prepared for. You had another slide on the next stages, which is segment 4.
Yep, wait, Mike, before we go there,
Mhm.
I know that there was a question about the 5-foot sidewalks and the pedestrian routing that Jake had. Could you answer that while we're on this slide still?
Could you repeat that question?
So the question, I think, and Jake, let me know if I'm getting this right. You had some questions about why there were only 5-foot sidewalks and also if pedestrian routing was any different from bicycle routing and connection to the station.
I guess I was more making a point that I appreciate that the sidewalk width has been a conversation here. I guess the concern I have is the width that this project has gone with is the legal minimum bar. So we're really not talking about like a big consideration for wide sidewalks. We're talking about the legal rules that every private owner in the city has to follow, and just matching that.
Which increases pedestrian and bike conflicts if they're all using it.
And we're actually, I might jump in on this one. I know on Exposition we had 10-foot sidewalks there, and the community really pushed back during our reevaluation and wanted more landscaping there. So we took the 10-foot sidewalks and converted them to 5-foot sidewalk, and the tree lawn that you guys see out there today. A lot of that came from the community wanting more landscaping, and especially with the buildings, within about 10, 15 feet of the roadway. We couldn't accommodate both without impacting the houses along Exposition, which were already a big concern to the community as well. So we're trying to preserve the historic look of the homes there and not impact them, and then also still provide sidewalks and the landscaping that the community really pushed for.
And that's kind of the beauty and challenge of those reevaluations. You're getting the feedback from community, and in the end, you may say, well, why, you're just doing the bare minimum. Yes, because there was a lot.
I understand that, and I'm all for tree protected things because the cars are so dangerous, especially in this area. But I think there's definitely some argument for road dieting on Exposition that could have been explored, right? Like it wasn't, we have to tear down houses or no sidewalk. Like there were other considerations. I'm just trying to make a commentary about, we've been told this is a safety project, and really not seeing who the safety's for, other than less pedestrians on my car hood is kind of what we're kind of getting. I think is the takeaway that I think a lot of us are having. Like there's nobody on houses on Kentucky, right? So where was the conversation on, like, those are minimum too. And then we're asking some people to be on bikes on some of these 10-foot sidewalks, but it's really confusing on a mixed use path to then transition to a neighborhood sidewalk. And so we will have a lot of bikes on a 5-foot sidewalk, which is scary.
So
we're forgetting an important part is that the transit component, RTD had a big voice and exposition too, because this is going to be their northern access in and out of the station. So we had to take into account how, you know, they need 11-foot lanes for the buses, right? So they're not impacting each other coming in and out of this intersection too. So that
Well,
was a
maybe
huge push for us as well on exposition specifically.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's where some updates could be looked at, because I know when this project started, RTD wasn't allowed to remove parking from that parking lot. And now the State House has given them permission to. So maybe we could look at exploring shrinking their parking lot and expanding that road and actually prioritizing pedestrians here. So, I mean, I guess I'm just challenging that I don't think these are unovercomable things. They're just choices we made. And I think the challenge I would give to the team is, could we take choices that really highlight that we care about the human lives that are walking down the street and all the pedestrians that are going to that transit station, because they deserve a safe route to that transit station, and they deserve to not be fearful.
Yep. And so I think somewhere there, I think Jake, you make a great point. I think a prevailing theme we're seeing throughout this is it seems like we are artificially constraining our options. We're saying, well, it was either the tree lawn or the sidewalk width, but didn't consider, say, removing parking, something along those lines, and still maintaining an 11-foot width on exposition that also doesn't consider what we could have done differently on Ohio, Kentucky, et cetera. And I think that's a prevailing thing with the number of these options where we're saying, did we really need this many conflicts? Did we really need this many crossings? And that's feedback we're hearing from across the group. With
Yeah,
just
and it's a very complicated area, as you know, and I think we couldn't remove some of the parking because the houses, that's the only parking some of the houses had. So yeah, it's like you said, we could
again, though,
very complicated.
That is a choice to remove or not remove. With the time we have remaining here, though, I do want to talk more about segment 4. I know we have a slide coming up that you reviewed briefly, showing what is in segment 4 and funding status, et cetera.
Yep.
It looks like we don't have funding for this yet, looking to seek it soon. We do need to accommodate some of these project goals within segment 4, as we've done with all of the other project segments. We have seen with every other project segment as well that there have been adjustments made during the course of redesign, funding requests, et cetera. I know there's a lot of interest from the community and has been expressed from this board in understanding what we can do to change designs for segment 4. Particular opposition has been to demolishing these houses when earlier design alternatives did not include design alternatives that did not demolish those houses. I know there's also been a lot of opposition to creating this slip lane onto Ohio, which was not in earlier phases. Knowing that we have made changes to some of these projects in earlier phases, as highlighted on the earlier slide, I'd love to understand a bit more from Joel's perspective what we, as the Department of Transportation Infrastructure, and the advisory board for that group, as well as citizens, can do to impact and influence segment 4 before funding goes through, to make sure that we're getting outcomes that are amenable to the community's preferences.
So the big picture is that this is in the preferred alternative, and it is part of the requirement of the overall project. So that is something that is a federal highways requirement for this overall project. That's the space we're in. The question about the tweaks, there may be a reevaluation that could provide some tweaks, but tweaks are generally not removing an entire phase. And I think at this juncture, and again, I might let Deb or Mike answer this in a little bit more detail, but the tweaks are generally not such that they would remove a ramp or make a massive change. They're looking at, we've got a 10-foot space, as Deb described, and instead of a 10-foot sidewalk, we will, based on community input, have a 5-foot amenity zone to create that buffer and a 5-foot sidewalk. And then Deb or Mike, do you want to dive in a little bit more in terms of what tweaks could be anticipated, what can be done to change things? Our understanding from FHWA and from previous conversations, my understanding at least, is that this is a requirement of the overall project. Is that correct?
Well, I want to sort of clarify intent before you, when you say this, what is this? And I'm asking that in the context of two things.
Mhm.
The earlier tweaks did include deletion of like a multimodal path, replacement of a multimodal path with something else. So route changes are clearly possible. And we've even seen up a little bit further on I-25, rather loudly, CDOT recently said they are no longer going to complete their NEPA preferred alternative for that segment. So I think two questions is, if they can do it, and CDOT has shown a willingness to do it in other areas, is it true that NEPA really requires us under some certain legal language? Otherwise, how could CDOT have done this? And when we say the scope of what could change within this project, we've seen large scope changes in earlier segments. So how big of scope changes could we anticipate for this project if requested?
Deb, would you like to take?
Yeah, I might let Mike start on that one, and then I can, since he has done the last couple of reevals on this one.
Yeah, and in terms of what can be done, I think we're talking about what could be done in the interior space. What is a requirement? Is this modification or reconstruction of the on-ramp to I-25?
And that, Mike, sorry to interrupt, but I think that's the this is the ramp. That is the base of segment 4. That
is correct.
Ramp, is that correct? Okay.
That is correct. And so the use of this area, there's some opportunities there. Greater separation from the roadway for those using the facility, getting in a wider multi-use path, improving the crossing in this area. I think those are all up for discussion. One of the challenges and one of the reasons why the path across Ohio at the end of segment 3 is so complicated, it's largely because of the traffic that currently needs to access this cul-de-sac.
So allow
that will improve over time.
That cross traffic to come in there, is that what you're saying makes that Ohio section challenging?
Correct.
The out of direction traffic, if you will. Okay. And then Jonathan, I think you were asking for a little crystal ball sort of what do we think is possible during the reevaluation? And Mike, I think you talked about a couple key elements of potentially making greater separation, making a better multi-use path, wider multi-use path, potentially with greater separation in that area. Am I paraphrasing that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay. And then were you also mentioning what happens in that area?
I think more so the question, I think I've seen this in the chat coming through a few times, is not just, we've talked a little bit about the question of what is possible, like could we eliminate this slip lane? Could we reshift this off ramp to make sure it avoids these homes, change shape, things along those lines. We're also seeing a lot of people trying to understand here what requirement it is that this get done. CDOT has clearly shown an opening to changing their NEPA approved plans. So when we say it's a NEPA requirement, what does that mean? We know that NEPA also has outs, essentially, requests to reevaluate as possibilities. So it sounds like we as the city or CDOT or someone could put forward a request to not do segment 4 or to reevaluate segment 4 or to change things, because we see them doing it on other stretches of I-25. So I think I'm wondering on behalf of some of these questions, what is in the realm of possibility? And I even see a couple of people commenting, we could also just have segment 4 planned and then never fund it, and then it never gets done. So I don't think I understand walking away from this, what actions citizens can take in relation to segment 4.
And I guess let's pose that question. Have we asked for this to be reevaluated?
So we know that we, as mentioned earlier,
I'm sorry, for Deb and Mike to answer, have we asked for segment 4 to be assessed as to whether it's needed in our conversations with CDOT and FHWA?
Now, I've been part of some of them, and I might let Mike jump in. I know we've talked about it with CDOT and FHWA, but it was probably a year ago before a lot of the public outcries come. We were willing to go back and talk with CDOT and FHWA about it, but it was very clear from the 2008 commitment that Denver needed to do that northbound on-ramp. At least I think that was made very clear to Denver at that time, and that we needed to put it forth in a future funding with federal funding grant cycle.
And that, you said, has been reiterated as recently as a year ago, but it's something that we could ask again. We could reconfirm.
Yes. And I think we had some contact information for both CDOT and FHWA if somebody else, if the community wanted to reach out to them as well.
Yes, we did.
Sometimes just hearing it from the city is not the same as hearing it from the community.
And that is in the FAQs that you all received. Lucia, I'm so sorry. Am I saying your name correctly?
It's Lucia.
Lucia. One of these days I'll get it.
It's okay. It's the Italian version. I'm just going to say what I've been hearing for ages and ages. Can we just stop? Just stop right now. I want to see the legal language that says you can't stop, because I'm not hearing anywhere from anyone on this advisory committee. I'm not hearing from anyone in my community or my neighboring community that they want this project to go forward. I don't know. It's certainly not, doesn't feel like it's benefiting anyone. Let's just cut our losses now and just stop. Stop what we're doing right now. I would like to see the legal language that says we can't. We are sentient human beings. We have free will. This was a bad decision. Let's just stop.
Well, I can tell you one thing from and thank you for providing that feedback. I do appreciate that you're frustrated, and I do appreciate that everyone here is being, I think, very respectful, and I do appreciate that. As I said, I think based on this conversation and past conversations, we certainly can do that cross-check again with FHWA and CDOT. And in terms of the work that is funded, that we are, Mike, if you can go back, there are some really significant safety improvements that are critical in this phase 2 that is going to happen, that we really need to ensure that we are providing improved safety for our pedestrians, for our cyclists.
It just seems that there would be better, that money could be much better used to improve the safety for drivers and pedestrians, by putting, a protected bike lane, a protected bus lane, things that, don't allow cars to go zipping down the bus lane down Lincoln, where a lot of the injuries happen. There just doesn't seem to be the wisest and best use of our millions and millions of dollars that we're looking at here. I would say, cut our losses and let's refocus our money on doing things that will actually make things safer significantly. If we're going to be spending $40 million, let's do something that's actually going to benefit the people, not the cars, the people, the human beings that are actually out there living.
Okay, thank you for that input.
So then we are essentially cresting the end of our time on this topic. Wondering if there are any final questions for Karen, Deb, and Mike before we transition out to other board business. I guess one last one I'd written down earlier, but didn't have a chance to ask earlier is around the funding for this project. I know you mentioned you'd be seeking funding in 2024. Do we know what vehicles we'll be using to do that? Of course, there's always a local match. I'm sure CDOT will be involved as well. Do we know how and when we intend to seek funding for this next stage?
So just to be clear, what you see in the slide here.
Sorry, I was referring to segment 4. Yes.
Yeah, this is funded. So let's go for segment 4. We do have our tip cycle with Dr. Cog, that and Nick, well, Deb, Mike, that is generally where we go after federal funding through a Dr. Cog process where it is weighed against other. It's, you know, how well it scores for safety and pedestrian improvements and regional connectivity, and goes up against other projects in the Dr. Cog region. Deb, Mike, any add-ons to that? Nick?
No, I mean, I think, you know, it's hard to say between now and 24. Obviously, a lot of the funding sources we're utilizing today weren't available 2 years ago. But typically, yeah, to Karen's point, Dr. Cog would be the main venue for seeking out federal transportation funding.
And that
and many of them are really specific on what we can ask for. Like it's the last couple ones, we could not have asked for money for this last phase, right, Nick?
Yeah,
it
that's
had to
my
be
understanding.
multimodal and or I think bridges was the last one. I mean, it was very prescriptive on what we could ask for, and they were very specific about not being highway. But at some point in the next few tip cycles, we'll probably see funding come available again.
And those tip cycles are every 4 years.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll conclude this topic. Thanks again, Mike, Karen, and Deb for coming to present today. I know we couldn't get to every question in the chat. I'll encourage our DOTI Advisory Board members to either reach out to me with those questions if you'd like to screen follow-ups, or to reach out to Karen, Mike, and Deb directly. We'll remind that we did receive a sort of FAQ document from them this morning. I know most of us, if not all of us, didn't have a chance to review all that before the meeting started, but should be a wealth of related information here. This was enlightening for me, and I hope it was for others as well.
And Jonathan, if I could add, what would be really helpful for us, because we would like to continue the conversation here, is for folks to look through the FAQs and see if any of their questions remain unanswered from after those. And Jonathan, could I ask you to be a repository for additional questions and then send them to, like say in a week, and then we would get those and do an FAQ part 2. And I always feel the need to say electric boogaloo after part 2. So yeah, there you go.
I can be the conduit there.
Great. Because
you guys, let me reiterate that again. Please don't email Karen and Deb, even though that was a suggestion that Jonathan, I think Jonathan might have brought it. Please don't email Karen or Deb or Mike directly. The reason is kind of like when we do an addendum for a contract, everybody's going to want to know your questions and everybody's going to want to know your answers. So if you email directly to Jonathan, then we can put together a Q&A and then get them out to everybody. So we're not continuing to ask the same questions over and over again. So let's have a process here.
And I'm hoping, because we did spend so much time on those FAQs that we sent you. Again, sorry that we didn't send them till today, but I'm hoping that a lot of your questions are answered there. But I'm guessing there are some that you have that aren't answered there. So please get those to us, to Jonathan. He'll get them to us and we'll provide any additional support needed. So thanks very much. I really appreciate everyone.
Yes, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a great evening. Wish me luck. I'm getting my COVID booster and a flu shot. If you don't,
I just,
you know why.
sorry. I just had one question. You had mentioned you had some other diagrams. I'm a visual learner and it was very hard to follow the presentation, to tell you the truth. And so if you have any other things a little bit more detailed, it doesn't have to be the working drawings or whatever, but it was really hard to
Sure.
figure out where the path was and how things were separated and what was wider and actually where the ramp was. It was very hard for me
Sure.
to tell. Anything you have on that would be great.
If you could put that kind of in a question form of, can I see a graphic of, you know, the cross section, a graphic of the pedestrian ramp, so that we get you the right illustrations, that would be super helpful.
Will
And-
do. Okay.
And I can tell you right now, our FAQ has 0 illustrations. So it's only going to provide you a little bit of what you're looking for, I'm guessing. So if other folks want to see things graphically, please let us know kind of where you
Will do.
want us to zoom in. That would be great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thanks all.
Yeah, thank you. So moving to the next part of our agenda here is reports out from our advisory board committees. I know I can speak on behalf of our projects committee pretty eminently, but before we get into that, just wanted to sort of jump ahead to what I might typically put in the odds and ends part of this meeting. Jake and I have met and talked through some of the feedback that we all shared around committee structure, what's working, what's not in the agenda, what's working not around timing of this meeting. You haven't seen any action on that sent out by email or otherwise, but to note, we have discussed, come to a couple of conclusions there. Between this meeting and next, we'll be sending 2, I suppose, suggested strategy changes to the group. One, relatively straightforward. It is a request with suggested alternate meeting times. I know one clear takeaway with this meeting after our last round of feedback was that this is now conflicting with city council. We have city councilors who sometimes want to attend. We sometimes want to reach city council meetings. So we have a few time proposals to put forward to you all to a vote. We would not intend to change the time of the meeting until the new year. So we will have time to replan calendars, shift agendas, things along those lines. But do want to get ahead of that change. As well, we have a few committee strategy edits. I know there was some expressed interest from folks saying, hey, I'd rather be in multiple committees, or we'd rather have some ad hoc committees, or, you know, I think this committee is really useful. This one is less so. So we have a few recommended changes coming out. You can expect that after this meeting. In the meantime, I will run down the list of committees as they stand today, and request that if any have met in the interim or taken action between last meeting and now, last full board meeting and now, that you provide a short update. So beginning with the projects committee, update is relatively straightforward. We met a couple of times, both with the stakeholders who reached out via community input channels about the Broadway and I-25 interchange project we just discussed. We also did meet with Karen, Deb, and Mike in advance of this meeting to prepare them for the types of questions this group would have and the type of content we were looking for. Given it's such a large project with 20 years of document history, we thought providing them some guidance would make that presentation a bit more effective. So we've not taken other business up or acted in any other business. That's what we've been working on between last meeting and now, in effect. So any questions briefly about projects committee actions before I move on to the next group? Sounds like no. All right. Budget and finance. Any updates from your end?
Hi, this is Alan. Sorry, I lost my voice. But we are planning on meeting later this month, looks like either the 23rd or the 27th, to discuss the budget in more depth. And anyone that wants to join that conversation is welcome to join. I'll send out a confirmed date and time once we have that.
Awesome. It makes sense. Earl noted earlier, Alan, while you weren't on, that the budget's getting released to the public in 2 days. Oh, maybe it was 3. I'm misremembering a little bit. In any case, yep. So yeah, 2 days. All right. So yeah, no surprise that with that, we're looking ahead to that. I know Jamie is not on today and he is our chair for the policy committee. Anyone from the policy commitment able to report out on any updates there?
I don't believe we met. Jake, did we meet?
No, I think the most recent output of the policy committee was the recommendations that we all voted on.
Yeah.
So I think that's our most recent update is that you all voted in favor of it. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. All right. So then two remaining community engagement. Have you had a chance to meet yet?
So I'm on the call. I literally just sent out an email asking the Community Engagement Committee for some meeting dates. So we will have a meeting before our next one. Hopefully you all got that meeting. It was 4 of us. So just want to make sure you got it. I asked for some meeting dates so that we can have ongoing meetings as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. And finally, operations.
Hey, Paul here. Me and Eileen, the 2 standing members of operations, have been texting back and forth. We're going to try to hammer down time to meet, but I guess the nicest thing I can say is I have nothing to report, and so hopefully we'll be done in time for the Broncos game.
Awesome. All right. With that, that's the end of our standing agenda. What remains from here is sort of an odds and ends portion of the meeting. Was thinking, just wanted to prepare for you all that our next meeting topic will, as no surprise, focus on the city budget. The next meeting is our only meeting that occurs between the publication of the public budget and its city council processes and ultimate eventual ratification. I think there might technically be a slight window in November where it has not yet been ratified and we've met, but it's in the final days of the entire process. So not much point in meeting and discussing at that juncture. Following that, looking forward to November, it is likely we will have a presentation, a new update from the Denver Moves Everyone folks who did provide us a presentation previously talking about the next stages of that project. We do not foresee that taking the entire time, however, so there are a couple of other agenda topics that we're bandying about based on availability of presenters. From there, Jake and I will be looking into this. We have not affirmed a December presenter, working on relative priorities and presenter availability for those as well. Wanted to pause there. Jake, anything I missed from some of our recent conversations around for the forthcoming structural changes or agenda items?
I think you captured a lot of the sentiment, Jonathan.
Okay, great. With that, we'll open to the group. Odds and ends here, anything that we didn't manage to fit into today's meeting. Are there any open outstanding questions, feedback, comments, or requests for change that we haven't already discussed today? Paul.
Yeah, I just want to say it's funny how different these meetings can be, right? Because one day it's highways and the next day it's trash removal and it's all the same thing. One of the things I'm seeing on social media that, harbinger of all that's good about humanity is a lot of misinformation about how the trash rollout's going to be, misinformation on fines and how punitive they may be. And so I'm just sort of challenging everyone here to be a mouthpiece, since we've heard several presentations on this, to sort of kindly, politely, because sometimes the comments I see on things like Nextdoor just make me want to smash my head through a wall. They're so uninformed, but be sort of the voice and words of sensibility about what the goals are of that, trying to steer more towards recycling and not punitively punish trash, but also talk about what a realistic trash output for a household is. I just think there's a lot of shock and awe misinformation kind of multiplying itself daily about that.
Yeah, fair. I mean, we are here meant to be representatives for our communities and help communicate back out to them. So a good reminder, we should be doing our best, since we're the most well-informed around. I'd suppose I'd say getting that information back out and solidified. Joe.
Yes, I I thought today's presentation was fairly frustrating, but actually very good in the sense that I hope as a group we kind of congealed that we were going to really push for the alternate means of transportation and tell the planners that I know it's already gone down the pike, but really want them to concentrate on that. And it seemed to me that it was a pretty much an afterthought. How do we get the cars to move around? And then we'll put a bike strip next to the road. So I think we made a pretty good, strong point to have them go back and look at that, or at least put that in their planning aspect of it. So I'm glad the group is thinking that way. And I think we did a fairly good job at that. And hopefully our questions will follow that line to push for the intermodal a little bit more than just kind of, as I saw it, an afterthought. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Brian, I see you had a question in the chat. Would you like to ask of the group here?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the budget coming out, I think it's probably a little bit more important that we start developing meetings to kind of communicate in between meetings. Slack is a service a lot of other city orgs use that facilitates that. Just kind of curious about the pulse of this group about setting something like that up.
So I know very little about setting up a Slack, but would be happy to work with you on that. I personally am a big Slack user. I'm in like 8 of them between work and otherwise. So easy enough for me to add one more to the list. Would love to see what's been working for other groups. And of course, this would be an optional thing. I mean, I think it's just easier for some folks to quickly communicate back and forth via Slack messages than to be sending, wide bent emails to the entire group. Even just formatting an email is a little bit more difficult in some cases. So yeah, I'd be happy to kick one of those off with you. And for those interested in having a sort of easy chat structure instead of email, I think that'd be a viable path to sharing feedback and communications quickly.
Yeah, I'm happy to help set that up. I've set the NDAC one up. It's pretty quick and easy.
Not too bad. All right. Lucia.
Yeah, I really want to meet some of you folks in person. I really want to have a drink with some of you folks or not, I would just like to, break some bread and just get to know you more as just these 2-dimensional figures on the screen. And I feel like, wow, that person thinks like me. Wow, I had no idea. And we've been meeting, it's been over a year. So I really just want to meet a lot of people in person. So I don't know if that means we have a meeting in person. I think the meetings work virtually, but if we can have a get together of some sort is what I would enjoy. That's all.
Seeing a lot of a sense in the chat for that. Seems like a lot of folks excited about that prospect. Maybe the first thing we can discuss on our new Slack. No, I'm kidding. But sorry.
Just a point of order with that, not to be the stickler here. If you guys meet and you have a quorum, meaning 11 more, it's an official meeting.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that so I don't want to be the principal either. So I don't want to be, I don't want to, anyway, I'm just saying that I know Parks and Rec's advisory board has gone through this too. And when they have done a happy hour and then they had quorum, they had to make it an open meeting that other people could come to. So that's fine too, whatever you want to do. But if you meet quorum, which I think is 11, we have to post it and we have to make it official.
But I think you might have already answered my immediate follow-up question there is, what is the impact, I suppose? It's not that we must take notes with a secretary, et cetera, et cetera. It is really just that it needs to be open and accessible to the public. Is that right?
And advertised, yeah.
And advertised, okay,
Yeah.
All right.
Just so again, I know with PRAB, they've had issues because members of the public have thought that these get-togethers were more business-oriented, and they weren't. But I think so if you guys, my offer is if you'd like to do something in person, an official meeting, we can do a hybrid meeting, which never works very well, but we can do that, at least to let other people see it. So we can have a meeting and then a dinner or something afterwards. So let me know if you want to do that. So we can do almost like a little mini retreat, but it has to be done with public view.
But Michelle, alternative there, instead of having a business oriented meeting followed by dinner, could we just make it a social engagement that is open and advertised to the public? And if the public comes, the public comes. We just, with the advertisement, it's not a business oriented meeting.
Exactly.
Okay.
As long as we post it and we make it available and people can come and you guys are nice to them, of course.
All right.
Potentially, this is something we can talk about in the upcoming community engagement meeting as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, at core, what this comes down to is if someone would be willing to raise the hand to organize, dates, time, location, etc. I think that's where this typically goes. Need a point person. So, Alicia, if you'd like to take it to community engagement, we can. Otherwise, if someone on the line would just like to say, "Hey, I want to organize this," and I'll do it. That'd be easy enough. Oh, I think Paul is trying to do that.
I realize I can unmute myself. I didn't want to hijack. I just started working for a new hotel in Cherry Creek. We have a rooftop patio. I'd be more than happy to secure some area for that. And because it's open to the public, perhaps it skirts that quorum or meeting thing while we discuss our nefarious deeds, Michelle. But it's also central. And what could be very interesting is challenging everyone to get there, perhaps by alternative transportation, because the dilemma I run into there is Cherry Creek is mass transit accessible, but perhaps not as easy as, say, downtown is or whatnot. So just putting that out there. And if anyone wants to organize, I will happily advocate on our behalf.
Awesome. Paul, you also had your hand up electronically. Did you have something else? No. All right. So then a couple brief follow-ups from there. Yeah, Brian, I'll reach out to you to talk about a Slack setup so we have a means of communication there. Michelle might also sidebar with you to make sure that doesn't violate any, open meeting type requirements. It's discussion tool in the same way. I don't know if our emails fall into public record. I don't know if the Slack would need to as well. With you or perhaps one of the other groups that is already doing this, we can make sure that we're just not falling afoul of any rules there.
I think you're fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, and we'll look to get an in-person social arranged at some juncture in the next few months. Anyone else? Commentary, questions? Sounds like no. So something to expect, just to rehash, is very shortly another poll coming out for the group to determine when our 2023 meet time and permanent meet time will revert to avoid city council on Mondays, as well as a proposed action plan from Jake and I regarding committee participation and structure. And with that, we've got just a couple minutes left, but I think we can wrap early. Thank you, everybody, for joining this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.